U.S. President Donald Trump says he's holding off planned strikes against Iran's power plants amid, quote, very good talks between Washington and Tehran. But Tehran denies any such discussion, claiming instead that Mr. Trump is backing down in light of Iran's words of warning. With more, up next. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Tuesday, March 24th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Roughly 12 hours before the end of his 48-hour ultimatum to Iran, Mr. Trump announced a 5-day pause on his deadline, citing alleged talks between the U.S. and Iran. For more on this, I have Ruy Valdes with Spanish news agency EFE Spain here in the studio. Ruy, welcome back.
Nice to be here.
I also have Professor Kim Young-jun at the Korea National Defense University live on the line. Professor Kim, it's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Ruy, let's begin here in the studio. Let's start with details behind this latest development as announced by Mr. Trump, as well as the response from Iran.
Right. Trump extended what he called the ultimatum, that it was supposed to expire very soon. He extended it for 5 days. He said the decision followed very good and productive conversation with Iranian interlocutors. And if you check on the stock market, well, they seem to have responded well. The price of oil, more or less. But mostly what is interesting here is that Iran said what Trump is saying is not real. We are not in any discussion with the US right now. We are using intermediaries. So right now, the world is a little bit in this uncertainty to know which side to believe. As any war, also there's a part of war of information. So this puts, of course, the U.S. in a strange position after Iran denied this. And as we will speak further, there might be, I think, might have been confirmed very soon before I enter the studio, but there's many indication that Pakistan is actually the one that is acting or is going to act as an intermediary between Iran and the U.S. But yeah, that's more or less what happened. So this ultimatum to attack the power plants of Iran has been extended for 5 days.
Right, and speaking about mediators as well as Pakistan, of course, I understand beyond Pakistan, quite a number of other mediators have been working together with Pakistan to seek an end to the unrest in the Middle East. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, many of these countries, Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, as you mentioned, held talks in Riyadh to explore ways to de-escalate the crisis. It is reportedly that Egyptian intelligence officers contact Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they were actually, in those conversations, the ones that offered this 5 days extension of the ultimatum. Again, this is reports, it's not have been confirmed, but this might have influenced the U.S. to say, okay, we're going to go and say that we are giving them this extension. So what I'm trying to say here is that the actual extension of the ultimatum was achieved by this meeting or interactions of these countries, which would be more in line, if true, with what Iran is saying, that they are negotiating through mediators. And yeah, we are also listening that Qatar, Oman, France, and the United Kingdom are reportedly facilitating exchanges of messages between parties. And long story short, the major obstacles, even though with this new information, remain. There still has been attacks reported. There's still tensions. There's still no clarity on the future of the war.
Right. In the meantime, Professor Kim, some believe that Mr. Trump's latest decision was essentially driven by plunging stock markets and soaring energy prices. Do you agree?
Yes, this is a very uncertain situation. We have very uncertainty on how the world will go, especially Trump's dual message or mixed message is nothing new over the years. And but this time, particular people have confused the Trump hoax and dovish message toward Iran, just like Louis said. So that's why stock market is rising down. One hand, he said that Iranian regime will be removed by military means. At the same time, on the other hand, he said that Iranian regime will be the good negotiating partner. The negotiation will be sometime coming soon. So this year, Trump has used intentionally dual message or mixed message, just like over the years. But at the same time, this also show the confused internal situation of the White House or U.S. government on this world. So it is very uncertain how the situation goes, and we need to look at more closely at the action of the U.S. and Iran rather than talks. That's why we have a difficulty to expect the stock market rising down.
Right. Ruy, against this backdrop, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun, he's slated to sit down with his G7 counterparts in France this week. Could you tell us a bit about the upcoming diplomatic gathering?
Yes, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is plans to visit from 3 days to 3 days from March 26, starting tomorrow, to Paris and to a meeting that will gather the ministers of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the United States. Of course, South Korea participates as a guest country, and the meeting, of course, also is interesting amid all the conflict that is happening in the Middle East and the fact that Secretary of State of U.S. Marco Rubio appears that he will be there and probably even meet with South Korea Foreign Minister, even possibly a trilateral meeting, Japan, Korea, and U.S. as well. As we know, and we have discussed in this show several times, Japan and South Korea, for example, depend immensely on their oil supply from the Middle East. So everything related to the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz is a big priority for those countries, and of course is one of the plans to be discussed during this meeting by everybody involved. If this meeting with Rubio happens, of course the attention would be if U.S. will keep pressuring South Korea and also other countries to send military ships to protect navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. It will also probably give more clarity on the measures that these countries will actually take. Many of the countries involved already were part of this statement that they were gonna act on assuring security of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. So well, if this meeting gives us more clarity, if it's going to be a military intervention, how is it going to be, more of the details, maybe could be discussed more in the sense of diplomacy. But of course, the eyes of the world right now are in that issue in particular. Seoul, in general, has approached the issue very cautiously. They are in this position where they have to be very careful on the decision they make. But as also we have discussed in the show, time is running out for the countries that depend so much from this strait to get their oil and gas supplies. So it would not be a surprise that there are important announcements made soon if the conflict doesn't solve, well, as soon as we all want to hope it does, but yeah, that would be more or less where the attention is.
Right. And Professor Kim, with regard to Mr. Trump's earlier request for warships to secure the Strait of Hormuz, as Ruy mentioned, experts here in South Korea have been calling for, and I quote, strategic ambiguity. Now, granted, Mr. Trump has since said that the Strait of Hormuz could be jointly run by him and the Iranian Ayatollah. First, what are the prospects of this proposed joint control? And second, what are your thoughts on the concept of strategic ambiguity by South Korea?
Yeah, a strategic ambiguity, the term is fantastic to show the Korean situation on this war. So to South Korea, Iran, and Middle East, country, a very important partner, not just the oil, gas, but in other trading. So to be on this world, South Korea has tried to maintain the good relation with Iran and no clear option for this difficult situation. That's why South Korea position, some people say strategic ambiguity. Strategic ambiguity is a really good conception for South Korean action. Some people blame, other people support, but sending troops or warship from South Korea is not the best option anyway for South Korean national interest. And when you consider any possible physical conflict with Iran, it will be disaster, and this will be the long-term disaster for the South Korean economy. So wait and see strategy, like the strategic ambiguity, is South Korean position on the this war for a while, and then after negotiation has complete between the Iran and the U.S., the South Korean role will be more increased for peace, like peacekeeping forces or other option.
Right, and staying with the Strait of Hormuz, Ruy, NATO Chief Mark Rutte says over 20 nations, I believe, including South Korea, have come together to show support for this particular strait. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yes, well, in a way related to what we discussed, what Professor also was discussing, regarding the importance of the Strait of Hormuz and all these countries' potential involvement, Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, said that 22 countries have come together to coordinate the response, and this includes South Korea, Japan, Australia, for example. South Korea is not a NATO member, but of course participating as a key partner country and with many allies in the organization. And according to Rutte, what he's saying is that they are working through three key questions. The first one is what resources are needed. The second one is when those capabilities should be deployed. And third, where exactly operations should take place along the shipping route. So in a way, this coalition, as we have mentioned, is getting into the details, according to him, of how would everyone will intervene. We already saw coordinating measures by many countries in terms of barrels of oil liberated from reserves, to try to reduce the price of oil. But as I was mentioning, if the conflict goes further and further, it complicates and it doesn't end soon, and there's still not only threats, the Strait of Hormuz is actually shut down or blocked, or the security is low for other countries. Well, yeah, this is gonna pose a big challenge on when to act more than anything. So, well, yeah, this is basically what he was saying.
And Professor Kim, I wonder, do you believe a multilateral effort to ensure the stability of the Strait of Hormuz would be a viable option? And if that is the case, what should be the strategy?
For a short term, a multilateral effort in this region is not very useful or will be helpful because of Iranian regime do not observe Western country multilateral effort. But fundamentally, however, for the long term, multilateral effort will be the best option in maintaining peace in this region without the U.S., Iran, and Israel direct participation. For multilateral effort for the long term, China and Russia should be part of this multilateral effort, and this effectiveness will be very successful for the long term. But anyway, limited in this situation because it cannot impact action of Iran and the U.S. Until the negotiation has reached between the two. So this multilateral effort should be continue, not for the short-term goal, but more for the long-term peace in this region.
Right. Ruy, speaking in an interview with American broadcaster CBS, Mr. Rutte appeared to share an understanding of the U.S.'s military mission against Iran by referencing North Korea. Could you tell us exactly what was said and what were your takeaways?
Yeah, the main focus we should take on this is the logic that he was talking about. What he referred to North Korea was that as it happened with Pyongyang, if you negotiate too long, he say, you might miss the point where you can still solve the nuclear issue. Meaning that with North Korea, there was many attempts of negotiation, but then in the long run, what we see now is a country, a regime that is quite strong in nuclear weapons. So what he said is that the attack on Iran could be understood to prevent this development of the nuclear weapons and to prevent a case like North Korea. This North Korea lesson in the Iran debate, well, as I say, follows that the logic of years of negotiation and sanctions did not prevent the regime to acquire nuclear weapons. Still, we have to understand that these are, well, different contexts, different regions, different countries, and even inside the same U.S. government, not so long ago, the counterterrorism chief resigned, saying that there was no indication that Iran was actually a threat in that sense to the U.S. So right now, I think we're on stage too soon, or at least we don't have the information to really point the finger and say that the war was clearly justified, because we see mixed information from internal, let's say, from the same government of the U.S., the country that started this war together with Israel. So yeah, basically, what Mr. Rutte, or Secretary General Rutte, would face as a main question is to really, okay, if you're gonna refer to that logic, you're really gonna need to justify pretty well if Iran was actually the threat that you claim it was. And I don't think it's going to be an easy case to defend.
Right. In the meantime, Professor Kim, I understand that this next question might be quite tough, but it's the one on most people's minds as we speak. What endgame, Professor Kim, do you envision with regard to the unrest in the Middle East?
Yes, it's a tough question. We can imagine multiple scenarios, but the same goal of the U.S. and Iran is that they want to finish the war as soon as possible for their people and economy. Nobody wants longer war at the moment, but to solve the problem, the third-party intervention sometimes is helpful, like Russia or China or others who can speak with the U.S., Iran, and possibly Israel. So to stop too many casualty and destruction, especially of the Iran, the U.S. Iran must have conversation and make some concession anyway. It is very uncertain when the war will stop, but this war is not helpful for anyone, and bad for the U.S. and Iran economy and people as well. The timing of and outcome of the end game is very uncertain at the moment, but this war must be stopped as soon as possible via effort of the Iran, Israel, and U.S., as well as the international committee, as we said earlier.
Right. Well, as many are hoping for the best, but I'm sure many are preparing also for the worst. On that note, I'm afraid we'll have to end today's discussion. Professor Kim, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
And Ruy here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks for the invitation.
Right, that brings us to the end of this edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow with more panel discussions. In the meantime, thank you for watching.